All right, welcome back to another episode of Bosco Talks. Today we're going to be talking a little bit more in depth about audibles, what that looks like for the quarterback. We're going to go through the Baylor game, the first home game for the 1984 team, and then again we've got some good fan Q&As. So, let's go with the audible, Dad. What exactly does that mean for you as a quarterback?
I will say this. You go into a game plan, you have a game plan, and you might have a few audibles. Like there's a lot of times you have what we call a check with me. And so you have two plays called at the line of scrimmage. And you watch the front or the linebackers, and depending on their alignment, you check to the one play. If it's a different alignment, you would check to the other play. So you have two plays called, and the quarterback's got to be able to read the key, whatever the play may be. You have to read the key, and then once you do that, you call the play that will fit the play better. That doesn't always mean it's going to be a better play. You still got to make your blocks and your angles and all that kind of stuff, but it does give you a little bit of advantage to be able to do that. Going up to the line of scrimmage with just a play called, there are times where you may have a play called that fits a cover 3 look with a free safety down the middle. And if they line up in a cover 2 look, you may want to change it to a cover 2 audible. And that is running like corner routes between the corners and the safeties and someone down the middle of the field. And so, other than that, I mean, offenses are all different. You might have more. I'm sure, like guys like Peyton Manning,
Yeah.
it felt like he called an audible every time. He may have called the whole play game by himself, but he was like, he was one of the few guys that is super good at that.
Unbelievable.
For our offense, I always felt as long as they weren't blitzing, and even if they were, we had what we call the side adjustments, which we've talked about in the past. Other than that, to me, if you read it properly, the coverage, almost every play has a better throw
Someone
than
else.
the other play.
Yeah.
Like if it's strong zone, I may throw it to the right because of the routes over there. But if they're in a cover 2 look, I may come to the other side. So quarterback just has to know what fits what defense better. But for the most part, I bet you 80% of the time, 85% of the time, I ran the play and we made something happen.
So when quarterbacks go up to the line and they're blue 82, is a lot of that just kind of fluff trying to throw off the defense, or is there is there a reason for some of that talk?
You know what? Everybody does it differently. So a lot of times, if it may sound like an audible, but it's the same play, so they could have different things. We were playing at Colorado State, and we had the ball like on the 3-yard line, and we had a sweep to the left, and it was way overloaded over there. So I was at the line of scrimmage. I go, man, what am I going to call? There's no way we're going to make that play. So I ran the play, and instead of handing it off, I just kept it. And I went around the end, and there wasn't anybody there. I mean, I literally could have walked in. So, it's one of those things where if you do that, it better work. Well, it
Yeah.
worked pretty good. So, but sometimes, we've never really talked about what to check it to, but they
Yeah.
had way too many guys over there, and I knew we couldn't block everybody. And so I thought, I'll improvise, keep the ball, and it was an easy touchdown for me.
On like run plays. So for that, for example, obviously a little bit different when you're on the 3 yard line versus maybe the 20 or the 25 going in. If you saw that, do you have are most audibles kind of the same type of play? You go run to a run and maybe just switch sides or switch holes, or do a lot of times you go from a run to a pass or a pass to a run? Is it obviously depends on the situation, but what's kind of the process there with if you have two plays in mind going into a play?
Yeah. We were playing at Baylor, and we had a running play on, and I was just going to run it. And I remember our right guard, Craig Garrick, was like, "We can't run it. We can't run it." So I checked to a pass play, and we completed about a 25-yarder down the field. So I'm like, "Let's go." And
Nice.
so, but I think mainly, I mean, everything is different,
Yeah.
and people do different things. If we had I mean, we really didn't run that much. We only had a few running plays, anyways. So basically, I ran that play. And defenses now seem a little bit more sophisticated, more guys at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
And so I think people still run it because if you get the key blocks, that running back makes a move, he could be gone. Um, but I think the big ones, run to a run, are typically those check with me plays. And a lot of times when I would check out of a check out of a pass play, it was either they were blitzing or I felt they were blitzing, so I added more blockers into the pass play, or the coverage was just like this play is not going to work, and then we did something a little bit deeper.
Nice. Awesome. Well, if you guys have any further questions on audibles or anything that we talk about in the playbook breakdown, we have something on our Instagram page you can write in. It's sometimes it's asking questions, but you can ask more questions on that. All right, so let's talk about the Baylor game. Obviously, Baylor going into the season, I don't think they necessarily had a lot of hype behind them, but it was the first home game. You guys had just beat Pitt. What was the lead up to that game like after a pretty tough game against Pitt?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it was our only loss the year before was against Baylor. And so going into that game, for me personally, I still wasn't completely confident to be able to get it done. I knew I could. Look, we beat Pitt, so we felt better, felt good about being 1-0. Going into that game, I felt still I had to prove myself or prove it to myself
Yeah.
that I was there. I was good. I was good enough to play. And so I remember Frank Layden. He was the head coach at the Utah Jazz. He was up in the press box and he was sitting with a bunch of Baylor fans up there. And because Frank told me this story one day, and he says, yeah, they kept on talking smack about BYU, and we beat them last year. And Frank says, just sit in your seat and watch the show. And we actually offensively put on a pretty good show. I remember throwing 5 touchdown passes in the first half
Yep.
and then one more in the second half. I think we beat them 47-13.
Yep.
And right there, we had our swagger. Offensively, our defense was awesome. They were
Yeah.
awesome against Pitt, and they were awesome against Baylor. But offensively, we had the swagger that we've had in the past and knew that we could play and knew that we could be pretty good. And so it was a great game for us. We moved the ball, pass protection was amazing. Receivers were catching the balls, and it was a game that we needed to win and win big. And I felt like I needed to have a big game to have that confidence in a quarterback.
Yeah.
And I think we were all felt like we were on the same page, and it was a big win for us.
No, it's awesome. Yeah, there was a lot of great plays. It's interesting. I was watching some highlights of it, and they were kicking off to you guys first. Do you remember them kicking the onside kick? Do you remember that at
No,
all?
no.
Well, their first kickoff,
Was that in the first half?
it was in the first half. It was the very first play of the game. It was the
Oh,
initial kickoff. They tried an onside kick, but they kicked it straight to whoever was in the middle. Fell on it. You guys came out, I think ran like 5, 6 plays, scored. It was quick. There was only one play. I don't know if you remember this one either. You threw it to Hey Mooley and he kind of got rocked a little bit. But other than that, you had obviously some great plays. The second series of that game for the offense was the David Mills that was kind of the right over both of the fingertips of the Baylor um, players, and so that was awesome.
That was probably one of the best throws and catches I ever had at BYU.
I
I
mean, it
threw that
doesn't get
ball
better
like
than
I just launched it downfield,
that.
and I'm like, slug goes down there somewhere, and bam, he made a great catch, and it was pretty awesome.
That's awesome. Were there any players going into the game on the Baylor team that were returning from the previous year? Anyone on their offense or defense that you guys were kind of more, I don't know about hyper aware of them, but just, hey, this last year, this happened, or this
Yeah,
defender. Was there anyone on that team?
not that I recall. I mean, basically, there were very few people in college that you felt like you had to double team to
Yeah.
block as a pass rusher, at least that we faced. And we played some pretty good teams, and I don't think we ever designed to do that. So we had a lot of confidence in our offensive line. We had 4 out of the 5 were seniors. They all started the year before. So we had the experience, and they were great players. So we felt like we didn't have to do anything
Yeah.
special there. So you just game plan to make plays and move the ball, and we executed pretty good that game.
Yeah. What was the atmosphere like, it being the kind of the first game at Lavelle Edwards Stadium for the year? Again, coming off of the Pitt win. I know we've talked a little bit about, you're saying, Cougar Stadium, when it gets up, it gets up. It's one of the loudest in the nation. What was that game like from the get go?
Well, like the Pitt game, we always travel good. So we
Yeah.
always have fans, but you don't have 65,000 fans. And so it's just always fun to play at home. It's always fun. The adrenaline gets going. And then when you're doing good and winning and playing, making plays, it's just fun to play in front of your hometown.
Yeah.
And so it was super fun. It was our first home game of that season, and we played. We showed up and played well, and the fans showed up, and they were loud, and it makes a big difference.
Yeah. And it also seemed like how this is kind of how your year went, or maybe this was kind of how the offense ran, but you guys had a lot of crossing plays. David Mills in the middle, Adam Haysbert on an out route, or Kozlowski on an out route. A lot of shorter plays that ended up hurting the defense because now they're starting to cheat a little bit. And then you guys had a lot of long plays, but it wasn't necessarily like, hey, we're going deep all the time. It was a lot of just like chunk yards and then big plays. Talk a little bit about that. Specifically in this game, it felt like that's kind of how the offense was rolling.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about quarterbacking and an offense is moving the chains. You don't have to throw the ball over 10 yards to make big plays. A lot of times, someone catches the ball, you make one guy miss, then like a little 4-yard pass could turn into a 15, 20-yard gain. And so if you can complete 60 to 70%, and 70 being really amazing, you know, your offense is pretty efficient. And so, but if you're always trying to throw the ball downfield, make huge plays, I mean, it's hard. You watch games all the time, and it's not like teams complete time after time after time those big plays. So the key to an offense is moving the chains, keeping your defense fresh, keeping them off the field, and I think we did a pretty good job of doing that, of kind of controlling the ball. And when you threw the ball as much as we did, you had plays designed that were just kind of like running plays. So they were just like little dumps. And then it's just like, instead of handing the ball off, you
Yeah.
get a guy out a little more open field. And now he's more one on one. He doesn't have to run through linemen and defensive linemen and backers. So he's got a little bit more space. And so, but that's what makes a good quarterback great. Who can make the big plays? Who can on 3rd and 5, 3rd and 7, can you make the right throw? Can you make the accurate throw? And so that's what can make yourself being a good quarterback to a potential great quarterback is moving the chains and keep getting those first downs.
Yeah. It it's interesting too because you kind of see that go hand in hand with how well the defenses are sometimes too. A lot of these BYU teams that we've talked about that were really explosive offensively, they were also really good at controlling the clock and keeping the ball and keeping the defense off the field. So, like you were talking about this Baylor game, you guys threw 6 touchdown passes. They had a couple runs, but the defense had 4 interceptions in that game as well. So they were fresh the whole game, getting you guys on the field. You guys took your time, finished the drive, scored, and then they would go back on, get another interception because they were fresh and, able to take that time. Um, was there any moments on the sideline that you remember from the Baylor game? Just because I feel like those games, everyone's loose, it's fun, right? You got everything's kind of clicking. Were there any moments in that game that you remember from the sideline or from Lavelle's perspective? He's always even keel, so I'm sure he was kind of the same the whole game. But were there any? Do you remember anything from that?
Well, every game on the sidelines, the receivers came over and told me they were wide open. I'm like, don't worry about it. I'll throw you the ball if you are wide open. And so that happened all the time. And half the time, our receivers, like if we called 62 Z corner, and our receivers knew if they're in man, Z corner is going to be a touchdown. And that's just how we felt, and that's how we played. So I would have Mark Bellini and Glenn Kozlowski fighting in the huddle. I'm Z. No, I'm Z. No, I'm Z. Then they would sprint out to the Z spot. And I mean, it was just like whatever. So we actually had a lot of fun playing too. And so other than that, when things are rolling and going good, you just got to be ready because you're going to get the ball back. Defense is playing good.
Yeah.
And you just want to keep scoring as much as you can. And so when things are going good like that and you're rolling up a lot of yards and stuff like that, I mean, we got to the point where we were happy to get a holding call. So it's like, oh, now we could get 20 more yards of total offense. And so we just felt like that as an offensive football team. And we were all on the same page, and it was just super fun playing with that group of guys.
When I was watching, it was kind of clips of the game, and one of them, you get up to the line. You probably didn't even call an audible, talking about audibles, and the guys up in the booth. Well, Robbie's calling another audible, or Robbie's calling an audible. Like, how do they even know he's doing
They don't
anything?
know.
So I thought that was funny. And then there was one other play that was, it's kind of feels like one of those moments. You're just kind of you made plays, right? It didn't matter what the situation was. You made plays. You dropped back. You step up in the pocket collapses. You're right at the line of scrimmage. It looks like you're going to, take off. And then you almost just toss it to the side to Kelly Smith. Do you remember that play? You had multiple plays like that during the season, but talk a little bit about that, your awareness of
Yeah,
the
it's
receiver.
amazing. It's actually one of my favorite plays because it's interesting. It's just kind of a natural instinct. So when I kind of scrambled a little bit, I think I stepped up in the pocket and I was going to run. And I'm not kidding you. I was running full speed.
Yeah.
I got to close to the line of scrimmage. And sometimes you think, how do they know where the line of scrimmage is? But it's like you kind of have that feel. And then I don't know how I did it, but somehow I saw Kelly Smith out of the corner of my eye. And so, boom, I just put on the brakes and just flicked it out to him. And I think he must have ran 60 yards downfield.
Yeah.
I don't
It,
know if
it
he
was a
scored
big
a
play.
touchdown, but I
It
think
was
it
close.
was a big play.
No, it was a big play. It was close. And kind of going, you talked about it, those plays that you guys didn't run a lot of running plays, but you had the running backs kind of going out. And Mike Leach kind of obviously picked that up from BYU. He's like, why do I need to run the ball when I can get 2 to 3 yards throwing the ball if I need to, or dumping it to the running back. So it felt like you kind of knew your running backs were always out on the side somewhere if you absolutely needed them, and more often than not, nobody was guarding them. People were out on the receivers or blitzing or whatever it was. Um, okay, last thing, you kind of talked about this a little bit too. When the game was over, you kind of felt like the team had the swagger. What was it like kind of going into the locker room, walking off the field and feeling like, all right, this is the team. Like we've got this. We know what we're capable of.
Yeah. I mean, it was a good feeling, but we also knew this was game number 2. We had 11 more games to go. And so it was kind of like people talk about Lavelle's demeanor on and off the field is kind of the same. So we never got overly hyped. It's always fun to win.
Yeah.
You semi-celebrate a little bit. You don't go crazy in there. You just know come Monday you're going to go back to work and you have another game to play. And the more you win, the more there's a big target on your back. We've always had a target on our back being BYU
Yeah.
because I think we probably won at that time, I don't know, 6 or 7 championships,
Yeah.
conference championships. So everybody's always going to play their best game against BYU, especially when you got into your league games.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, it was fun. Um, People were pumped, fans were pumped, but you just can't get overly excited thinking, "Oh, we're going to run the table now."
Yeah.
You got to go to the next game, and
It's game by
and
game.
at any given moment, a team can get hot and they can beat you.
Yeah.
So you can't be over. You got to always play with a little chip on your shoulder and expect that they're going to play their best game. So we also need to play our best game. And I think our team had that attitude all the time.
Yeah. I feel like some of those seniors kind of losing to Baylor the year before had that because it was probably a game that, not that BYU necessarily should have won, but it was probably a winnable game. That team was incredible, the '83 team, and so they kind of had that chip on their shoulder of like, hey, we could have gotten undefeated last year. Let's kind of do it this year. No, that's great. Okay, we've got two Q&As from fans. So the first one is, what was your nutrition like at BYU? Did you ever cook for yourself? And what were team dinners like?
So no, I never cooked for myself for sure. Nutrition was nothing like it is today.
Yeah.
And so we had what we would call training table, and it was over in Helaman Halls in the cafeteria. And we only got that during football season. So once 2-a-day started, after every practice, we could walk over there and eat. Um, and then during the season, we had our pregame meal there, and then that was it. That was the only time we ate. Then after every practice, we had dinner. You could have dinner over there too.
Yeah.
And so the meals were fine over there. There was nothing fancy. But compared to what they do now, the budget they have and how much food they eat and what they
Yep.
eat, it's like night and day. Like everything is night and day from 40 years ago to right now.
Yeah.
But that's all we knew. So it was amazing. We loved it. And they at that time they did have the best tapioca pudding I've ever had in my life. I never thought I liked tapioca pudding until I had the Cannon Center's tapioca pudding.
So
But
that's
other than
where,
that, we had some prime rib and we had different
yeah,
food, but
had good stuff.
I don't even know what I did eating wise because I really didn't ever cook for myself at all.
Well, you had the chili after games with your family. Was it the chili? So
Yes,
you were
when my
always fed
family
by
was in
them.
town, that's probably when I eat the best.
Yeah.
But my uncle and aunt from Price, Utah, and my cousins, they would all come to the games, and after all the home games, we would go back to my apartment, and we would have a big thing of chili. Um, And my uncle, they're from Price, Utah. My uncle was in the Marines and everything. And I remember one time he had the big pot of chili, and he had like a paper towel kind of underneath it holding it, and it caught on fire. That thing was just the flame and was burning his hand and everything. But that's what the Marines do. He just walked over and set it down, and it burned him, but he didn't spill any.
Yeah.
So that used to be super fun, just being with the family, winning, so we could kind
Yeah.
of everybody's in a good mood, and the celebration wasn't crazy, but we just won the football game happiness.
Always fun. Awesome. All right, and then last one. What would be one piece of advice that you'd give a QB at BYU today, or let's just go any QB in high
Yeah, I don't
school?
necessarily have to be
No, it
anything
doesn't have to be BYU.
high
Any
high
QB.
school,
Yeah.
and I think the biggest advice would be work on your footwork. I think like Steve Young had great footwork and he was fast, but I don't think you could ever just rely on that. I think you always got to work on that craft and moving around in the pocket, avoiding pass rushers. Sometimes avoiding a pass rush is just moving to the side 2 steps. So being able to see him, being able to move quick enough to get out of their way. And so I think some people take that for granted
Yeah.
and always practice hard. I remember when I was with the Packers, Lynn Dickey was one of the quarterbacks, and Lynn Dickey was like a 15-year vet for the Packers. He was there for a long time, and he pulled me aside one time. He says, "You gotta, anytime you practice, whether it's just one-on-one, whatever, you gotta bust your rear and get back on that drop and work hard on that." And that's the same with the footwork. That's all part of the footwork.
Yeah.
So if you practice lazy, you're going to play lazy. So that would be the biggest advice: is always be like you're in a game situation.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dad. I really enjoy doing these with you. Every week there's a new story that I've never heard before even, and it's been super fun. So again, if everyone could go rate the podcast, go follow us on social medias, and we'll keep these coming. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.